Either that or barnacle. No. Okay. Excuse me, Jed. I'm sorry, Jed. Let me start this over, please. We have a special guest here today.
He is special.
Here with us now,
Ronald Reagan's favorite magazine.
Editor of Human
when
Events
he was alive.
and HumanEvents.com, Jed Babbin, who also served as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense under President George H.W. Bush, and he recently wrote this. Bush rebranded the Republican Party so deeply, Americans lost trust and confidence in its leaders, which is why President Obama, congressional Democrats, and the mainstream media are working so hard to convince voters that the Republicans are still the Bush Party. Republicans can't, in the short time between now and 2010, shake off the Bush brand entirely, but they can distance themselves from it. To do so, they have to defend what Bush did right and criticize openly what he did wrong, which is something you have done consistently.
Well, it is. And Jed, you and I have talked about this over the past 4 years. We were critical of George W. Bush when so many Republican suck-ups were defending the indefensible. And people still get angry when you try to explain what went wrong over the past 8 years. Can you please explain what you mean so maybe some Republicans will listen to this? Let's admit what we did wrong.
Well, I think that exactly right. We have to admit that things like trying to appoint Harriet Miers to the Supreme Court was just horribly wrong. That, in fact, getting into the nation-building, self-imposed quagmire in Iraq was wrong. But a lot of what Bush did was right. I mean, what do you have to do for an encore after Sam Alito and John Roberts? The real issue here now, Joe, the practical political issue, is that the Democrats are so desperate to keep George Bush in the front for the Republican Party. That's why they're going through this whole business on the so-called torture memos. That's why Obama's making such a big deal out of trying to close Gitmo. And that, beautifully as it is done, so wonderfully in American politics, that's why Ms. Pelosi is twisting slowly in the wind, having raised herself up the flagpole.
Well, so, Jed, what do Republicans need to do to move forward? It seems to me, if you look at the Sunday shows this past week, it was all blasts from the past. You had John McCain. You had Newt Gingrich. You had Dick Cheney. I guess we have Michael Steele now. Oh, happy days are here again.
Well, you have to get outside the Beltway. I think what you see on these Sunday talk shows is the only thing that can get through the electronic blockade that currently keeps Republicans right here in Washington. What they have to do is get past the Sunday talk shows. They need to go out, some real conservatives, young guys, relatively young guys like Mike Pence or Tom Price or Jeff Sessions or Jim DeMint. Those are the guys they need to get outside the Beltway, stop talking about George Bush, start talking about how to repair this country, because Barack Obama is transforming it into France. I mean, we're ripping up. Right now, this Congress, this president, is tearing up the social contract that has kept America together since the Puritans landed in 1620. We need to renew that contract with the American people. And if it takes another Newt Gingrich-like contract with America, so be it. But you can't do it inside the Beltway. You have to get the heck out of Dodge and talk to real people.
Mike Barnacle.
So you maintain that congressional Democrats and the mainstream media are concocting or playing along with this plan to convince voters that the Republicans are still the party of George W. Bush. It begs the question, what do you do about George W. Bush's vice president, who is on TV more than almost anyone? I mean, what do you do? Put him under house arrest?
First off, you don't put him under house arrest, because a lot of what Mr. Cheney is saying is precisely right. This is the part of saying what Bush did wrong, you criticize. What Bush did right, you don't criticize. And I'm not saying what you just say. I said what I'm saying is you get outside the Beltway with real people. You don't necessarily tell Dick Cheney to stop talking about the fact that Barack Obama is cherry-picking the memos on torture, so-called torture, that he's releasing.
Yeah, and he is cherry-picking that, and we've been saying that here.
Of course he is.
Here's the problem, though, Jed. There's an inconsistency in your statement. The Bush brand brings us 19% approval ratings, perhaps, 18% maybe.
Maybe lower.
Maybe lower, exactly.
God.
Dick Cheney, every time Dick Cheney is out there, it reminds Americans of George W. Bush. It seems to me that we need, as you said, somebody younger that is not as directly related to the Bush administration to deliver Dick Cheney's message.
Look, I think that's probably right, and I think that when you say to Dick Cheney, don't say anything, you can't. You can't say that.
Right.
He has to defend himself and the historical record. But when you go out there trying to rebrand the party, Cheney's not out there trying to rebrand the party. He's trying to defend his own actions in the administration. What you have to have is you need to not say, oh, here's our brand new face, John McCain. You need to get the guys like I just talked about, Price and Pence and all the rest of them, and get them outside the Beltway in town hall meetings all across the country talking about conservative values. That's how you get away from the Bush brand, because Bush was not a conservative.
Well, I wouldn't argue, Jed, that there's a need for rebranding. I'm not sure how much affiliation with the Bush legacy we're seeing in the Republican Party. I mean, Joe has a new book out talking about how fractured and shrill the message of the the Republican Party is right now, and how there seems to be a need to sort of come together, maybe moderate a bit in tone, and maybe perhaps keep people like Colin Powell under the tent as opposed to kicking them out.
Absolutely not. Colin Powell didn't get kicked out of the tent. Colin Powell left the tent running the other way.
Really?
Well, I mean, this is a guy, number one, who was the most supremely disloyal person to George Bush and the administration. Don't forget, Richard Armitage was the source of the story on Valerie Plame. He and Colin Powell together, they both knew that he was the source. They kept that from George Bush for over 2 years. Okay, then Colin Powell endorses Barack Obama. This is not a guy who got thrown out. This is a guy who ran out.
But let me ask you this question, Jed. Let me ask you this question. You would agree with me that when it comes to foreign policy, Colin Powell is perhaps one of the more conservative thinkers in America. With the Weinberger-Powell doctrine, you and I both believe that. That's the school we came from, the Powell School of Foreign Policy. Wouldn't it be good to have him in the party to at least keep us conservative on international issues?
I think we are already conservative on national issues. We don't need Colin Powell around to do that. It would be nice if he had a revelation that says, hey, I was wrong in endorsing Barack Obama. That I will confess my error in being so horrifically disloyal to the party and to George Bush for leaving them twisting in the wind for 3 years, 2 years on the Plame scandal. You know, I don't think Colin Powell is the knight on horseback that's going to save the Republican Party.
Right.
If you want foreign policy expertise, hey, talk to John Bolton.
Okay, horrifically, hold on a minute, this is a horrifically disloyal, twisting in the wind.
Yeah.
In the immortal words of Harry Truman, we're going to put you down as undecided on whether Colin Powell should be the next nominee.
And we'll get back to you.
We'll get back to you. Jed Babbin, thank you so much.
Jed,
as always,
your point
it's
of
really
view.
good talking to you.